In this episode, we are going to create our user model. So under the app directory, we're going to create a new one. This time we're going to call it models. And all of our models will be stored there. We will only create one for this series, but obviously if you're going to have page model later on as well for your CMS and many others, then this would be the place where you're going to put them in. Okay, we're going to create our user model now. So new PHP class user, it's going to be within app /models namespace, because app obviously represents this app directory, and then models obviously is the next one up. So that's our new user class, and it will extend model, the eloquent model. Eloquent model is what Laravel uses as well. So if you are familiar with Laravel, none of the things that I'm going to here will be new to you. We are going to start with a couple of properties. First one will be protected table to indicate which table this user is associated with, and it's going to be the only table that we have, which is users. Then we're going to have another protected property called fillable, and as you can see, my IDE automatically gives me an option to select from when I'm actually typing, and this is because these properties actually exist on this model. If we go to this model, this abstract model class, you can see we have table, and then we have those if we scroll down, fillable, and the attributes that are mass assignable. What does it mean? It means that when we actually going to be creating new model or updating it, we can actually pass an array as an argument rather than associating each property separately with the new value before we save it. So we want to be able to mass assign name, then we have email, then we have password, then we have token as well. We also have remember token, and actually before name we have active. I think if we just quickly check our migration tables user, we have active, name, email, password, token, and remember token. So that should be it. Let's just add some doc blocks here. That's a string, and this is an array. We don't need summary for these. Okay, the next thing we're going to create is the method that automatically hashes the password, because we don't want to store password as a string. We want to make sure that it's encrypted. So public function set password attribute, and then we pass the password as argument, and I'll explain all this in just a moment, what happens when we actually create this sort of method. Return this attribute, then password is the attribute that we want to change, hash class, which we create in just a moment, and then make method on this class, and we pass password as argument. Now, before we create this hash class, let me explain what this method actually does. Within the Eloquent, we can use setters like this. So these are starting with set and end with attribute. So whatever attribute you want to modify when you're actually associating, either by associating it with a property, let's say we have user, password, and then you pass a string, let's say secret. If we do something like this and then we save it, say user save, then what's going to happen is that when we're saving, before the object is going to be saved, it will check for all these setters. For methods, we'd start with set, then they have attribute, basically the name of the field that we want to modify, starting with a capital letter and ends with the attribute. And if it finds a method like this, then it runs this property through it. So basically, it's going to modify whatever column field, obviously property on a given object we want to modify. So it's going to convert this password, which is by default going to be sent as string, because we're going to associate with this as a string, or pass as an array, obviously of a key and values. And we're going to modify using this hash class with a make method. Once all these setter methods have been executed, then it's going to go ahead and save records to the database. Now, what we also can do is, if we want to modify, let's say, a name, we could do it as well using simply public function set name attribute, and now obviously we pass name through, and you could do whatever you want with this attributes. Now, why do we actually refer to this attributes array? This is because Eloquent uses array to store all of our properties of the object. So all of the properties are within the array. If we click on this model, if we scroll down, you'll see we have this attribute, and this is model's attributes basically. So whenever you do something like, if we go back here, let's say user password, it's simply user attribute password. That's what it refers to behind the scenes. And it uses magic methods to later on obviously access these properties. And if we go back to the model, let me just quickly show them to you. So we've got get, set. For instance, if you want to set it, it's set attribute. So we've got a key and value. So for instance, password, and then whatever this password you want to be, and then set attribute. What it does, it basically check if it has mutator, which means if we have this setter method, which we've discussed earlier, as you can see here, has mutator. First of all, it checks, and has mutator basically checks if we just click on has mutator method exists, and the method name is set, then string, obviously Starly puts the first letter of the given key to capital, as I explained, and then appends attribute. So in our case, it will be set password attribute, which is the name of the method that we've created here. And if we go back to this set attribute, then it creates this method and then simply runs it. And because this method, from within this method, we actually return whatever we associating. So apart from the fact that we associating whatever we're going to do with the given attribute, with the given value, we're associating this with the obviously index on this attributes array, we also returning it. So at the same time we get obviously here the value, modified value, and we're returning it as well. So we get this on the attributes array as well as we're returning this at the same time. So that's how it works obviously. And then we have other checks if it's a date and so on, and then we're returning the instance of itself, obviously associating again value with the key. But at this point, obviously, if we have a mutator, this set method, then obviously this is when we our set attribute ends obviously its execution, because from here we're returning already the value. Okay, so that's what these setters are doing. So if you need to modify anything before it gets saved to the database, create the setter in the following format, and obviously you can do whatever you want with the value before you associate it with the property. Okay, so now hash method. Let's quickly create the new class, which is going to be under utilities. We're going to create the class hash, and the namespace is correct because it's app utilities. And this hash will have only two methods. First one will make the hash, the other one will verify it. So public static function make, we take a string, and this string will simply return password hash. We pass string through as an argument, and then password default constant. And if we save it, if you want to check documentation, so let's copy the name of the function, go to php.net, and there we go, password hash, and it creates a password. The password hash creates a new password hash using a strong one-way hashing algorithm. Password hash is compatible with crypt, therefore password hashes created with crypt can be used with password hash. And then we have the following constants, the algorithms, and we've used this password default, use the bcrypt algorithm, and its default is of PHP 5.5. Note that this constant is designed to change over time as new and stronger algorithms are added to PHP. For that reason, the length of the result from using this identifier can change over time. Therefore, it is recommended to store the result in a database column that can expand beyond 60 characters. 255 characters would be a good choice, which is what we've got obviously with our varchar in the table for the password with the length of 255. Okay, so let's go back to our editor. So here we encrypting, hashing our password. Let's add the dog block. It takes a string, which is going to be a string, and it returns string, which is hashed, and then we go hash string for the summary, and the next method will verify it. So public static function verify, and we take the string and then hashed string as well. Let's just put hash here, and I think that's it. and then we are going to return password verify. We pass string, no server string, and then the hash. This basically is password verify. Again, you can go to php.net to check what it does, but it basically takes the string and then the string which has been hashed, obviously the same string, and then it tells you whether they are the same. Because this password hash will generate the new unique hash every time, even with the same string, so it's never going to be the same. Okay, now verify. Let's add the dog blocks here. We're passing string through. Hash is also going to be of a string type. Boolean for the return tag, because it's going to tell us whether it's valid or not, and then verify string against the hash. There we go. And that's all within our hash class. So let's quickly write a test for it as well under utilities. Let's just create a new test called hash test. The namespace is fine, and we are extending base case of the app test. And we start with public function correctly makes and verifies hash. And let's make it a test. Okay, so now what we're going to do, hash we start with, and then hash, the utility ones, make method, and let's pass secret as string. And now let's verify it by routing it through the assertion. So assert true, and hash verify, we pass secret, and then hashed secret, so hash, and that should return true because obviously secret is a secret, and then the hash should obviously represent the hashed value. Okay, so hash make verify failed if for any reason this method did not return true. Okay, let's go to our terminal and make sure that obviously we are in the correct directory within the root of our project, and let's run php unit. Let's go to this specific test, so test unit utilities and hash test, and there we go, one test, one assertion, all works fine. So we made the hash, and then we verified, everything seems to be working fine. Okay, let's close this hash test and hash class. Now let's import it to our model, user model, and it's app utilities hash. So if you haven't got automated imports, then obviously make sure that you add this use statement here, app utilities hash. Okay, so this is our setter. Let's add some dog blocks to it as well. It takes password, which will be of the string type, and it returns a string as well, and hash password for summary. Okay, so this is the first method. Then the next method I'm going to have on this model is going to be using this hash verify methods to make sure that when we pass the password through, that it actually verifies it automatically. So public function verify password, and we send password as argument here, and return hash verify password, password against this password property, which is going to be hashed, because obviously we're going to store the hashed version of the password within a database. So when we pull it as a property, that's the hash, and that's the password that we're going to receive from the login form as a string, which is when we're going to be able to verify it. Okay, let's add the dog block here as well. Password will be of the string type, and then verify password for the summary. So that's the next method. Another method, now we're going to use the query scope, which will allow us to pull the record by a given email. And query scopes in Eloquent start with the keyword scope, and then however we want to call this method. And let me just demonstrate it. So public function scope by email. And we're going to have a builder, Eloquent builder as first argument, and I'm going to call it query, and then whatever argument I want to pass to this method whenever I'm going to be calling it. So our argument is going to be simply an email. And all this will become a little bit more clear when we actually start using it, but I'll try and explain as much as I can. So return query, and we're going to add where clause to our SQL query, email field equals email. We could do it either this way, or if you prefer, you can put equal symbol here and then comma. If you omit the second argument and you only have two arguments, then where clause automatically assumes that you're actually trying to make sure that the item, the field, equals whatever the value is. Otherwise, you could also do like, you could also do, say, more than, and so on. So all these operators are still available as a second argument if you pass three arguments through. If you only pass two of them, it's always going to use equal symbol for the where clause. So whatever our clause is going to be, select all from, say, table users, where email equals email. So this scope basically by email, later on when we're going to be trying to fetch the user using the following statement, user, which is our class, and then by email. And now have a look at what happens here. I'm going to pass email, let's say info@ssdtutorials.com. And then we're just going to add to this first method to fetch this user, because up to this point, we build in a query and then we want to get it out of the database. So first would be the option for us if we only obviously want to retrieve one user, and in this case we will, because obviously email field is the unique field, so you will only have one user with the given email within a database. So that's how you would call it. So when you creating the query scope, you use the scope, then capital letter for the next word, the capital letter for the first capital letter for the following, and so on. And then when you call it, you remove the scope, you lower the first letter of the following word, which in our case is by, and then follow the same camel case as you've got for the rest of the method. So by email will be represented by the query scope method, scope by email. So that's how you would use it later on. But we will get there anyway. We will use this method later on, so you will be able to see it, basically how it works. Okay, let's add some doc blocks here. So it takes the builder as the first argument, and by the way, as you saw, obviously I only passed the email because this query builder will automatically be injected to this method when it's executed. We don't have to pass it, we only pass the second argument and whatever other arguments we might be using. So going back one, user by email, we pass our email address, so info, say ssdtutorials.com. That's all we are passing through as an argument, which is going to be a second argument right after this query builder here. And obviously the eloquent will make sure that the argument, obviously this builder, is injected apart from all the arguments that we might be passing through to this method. Okay. So that's our scope email. Let's move to the next one. The next method we're going to need is going to be another query scope when we can obtain record by a token. So public function scope by token. And we're going to pass again builder, eloquent builder query, and we pass token as the second argument. And this time we're going to return query where token equals token. And let's quickly add doc blocks again. Token will be of a string type, and here we've forgotten for the email as well, it's going to be a string. And what we're going to have here, and let's just quickly click on this where method, what it returns this. And what is this actually? If we scroll up to the top, this is represented by the builder. So we can either leave it as this, but this here doesn't really mean much to our user class, or just simply put builder. So builder is what we return in the eloquent builder. So let's change it here, and the same for this scope by email. So let's close this builder class. So that's by token, and the summary is going to be get record by token. What do we put here? We didn't put anything for the email, so get record by email and verify password. We've got the summary, so that's fine. Okay, the next another query scope will be by remember token. So when we're actually trying to retrieve the user by the remember token, public function scope by remember token. And again, builder as the first one. This is the eloquent builder, query, and then token again. And this time return query where remember token equals our token. Remember, there we go. Let's add the dog block again. And it also returns builder, this eloquent builder, and the token is going to be of the string type. And get record by remember me token. And let's just scroll up because I want to make sure that you importing the correct classes here. So we've got this Illuminate database eloquent model, which is what we're extending from within this user class. And then this builder is the Illuminate database eloquent builder, which is what we are injecting and then what we are returning as well. Okay, so we've got scope by remember token. Then another few helper methods. First one will be to reset the token. So whenever we're going to send the, let's say if we register the new user, and if we've decided to use the activation process, so they first receive an email, they have to click on the link within email, and then they activate the account. This is where this token is going to be reset. So public function reset token. This is going to happen when they register and before we send an email, because this is the token that we're going to actually send in this email, appended to the URL, which they have to click. So reset token, we're going to set this token equals MD5, let's use here, and this email. And then this save, which is going to save this token to the database, this new token. And then we are going to return this token. So what we're doing here, we're generating the new token and we're saving the record. So user will have this new token, which is basically the email run through the MD5 method to hash it. And we are going to return this token at the same time with this reset token method. So let's add some dog blocks. It will return string and it's set. So set and get reset token. Actually, sets and get token, rather reset token. Okay, so reset token, and next method, the helper, which is going to help us later on, is going to be called isActive to check whether the user is active. So public function is active, and we simply check return, and I'm going to typecast it to integer, make sure that whatever I'm returning through the property this active is of an integer type. It will be, but I want to make sure that I can use actually the triple equal symbol for a check for equality, data type as well in this case, and it equals 1, integer 1. So isActive will basically tell us whether the user has activated their account. So check if user has active account. Okay, so this is one of the methods. Next method will make the user active. So when they return from the activation process, so once they've clicked on this activation email, activation link within their email, they will be redirected to the activation page, and this method will be used to make the record active. So public function make active, and we're going to go for this active equals 1. So we set this from 0 because by default it's going to be inactive, represented by integer 0. And when it's active, it will change to 1. Then this token will set to null. We no longer need this token. And then this save to make sure that all this data is saved to the database with the record. And then we return this so we can chain it further if we need to. Okay, and dog blocks. Returns this, which is basically user. Let's just keep it as this because now we're referring to the actual class that we are within. And then activate user account. So that's the next method. Then another two methods that we're going to create. One of them is going to be to update the password. So public function update password. We pass password word through as an argument, and then this First of all, active, we are going to automatically set to 1. Why? Because this update password will be used with the reset password functionality. So first of all, the process starts when you're seeing the forgot password form, where you type in your email address. Once you've submitted this form, the email with the activation, basically with the link to the reset password form, will be sent to this email address. If you've clicked on this email address, you obviously receive this email, and this email address is valid. So at this point, whether the account was active or not, let's make it active straight away, because we know that obviously you've received email and this email is valid anyway. Okay, so this token we are going to set to null. And then this password, because token will also be generated for update password, so that we can identify the record later on when we're resetting it. And password will be set to whatever password has been passed through as an argument. And again, we are associating the string with the property password, but we know that behind the scenes, we have this setter, which will automatically make a hash out of it. So we don't have to worry about this. And then this save. So the record gets saved to the database, and we return instance of itself this, so that we can chain it further if we need to. And again, let's add the doc blocks. It returns this. Password will be of the string type, and what it does is basically updates password. So update password. So after update password, the next method will be to update remember token. So public function update remember token. And this remember token equals hash, and let's just do SHA algorithm 256, and then we use this string illuminate class with the random, just a random string, and we hash it with SHA256 algorithm. Okay, and then we simply save it to the database. So save. So whatever we've associated with this property will then be saved to the database. Okay, again, we can return this if we want to chain it any further. And let's add doc blocks here, returns this, and update remember me token. And this method will be used when we see that the user who's trying to log in has checked this remember me checkbox. At this point, we're going to generate this remember me token, save it to the database, and send it back as a cookie, so later on we can identify it by this given token. Okay, so that's our user model completed, and in the next video we are going to write a set of tests to make sure that everything works the way it should.